Hey guys, really quickly before this episode starts, I just wanted to say that this podcast is produced by the I.A.M Podcast team, which is my company. And if you're looking for a podcast yourself, or your business is looking for a podcast that is along the same lines as this, we're on video or on audio, please feel free to contact us on the link below, and we look forward to talking soon. Cheers. You know, your routine can be shot, as you know, with your stuff as well. And like, you can get calls at random times.
Why we started it in the first place, and that was to benefit and sort of better men's mental health. And sort of, if I can sort of focus my area into fixing someone else, it means I don't have to fix myself.
Welcome back to the podcast. I'm Tom.
And I'm Joe.
And this is Inside the Mind Season 2, where we'll be discussing all about men's mental health under our 3 pillars, which we think are the most important in terms of men's mental health and the ones which men struggle with the most. And that's relationships, finance, fitness. That can be mental fitness and physical fitness. And we can't wait to get into Season 2. Joe, it's been a month and a half since our last episode. Yeah, I know. It's gone quite quick. A much needed rest, though.
Yeah, definitely.
What have you been up to recently?
A lot of change for me personally. I feel like last week I officially stopped playing rugby, which has been a bit of a weird time for me. It's been good though. I've been busy, quieter with work, busy with obviously preparing for this, which has been really exciting. And then rugby's come to a grinding halt, which has been quite weird actually.
How's it felt? I've had a similar story.
Yeah, it's been weird. I've enjoyed sort of thinking about staying involved with the club in some capacity, whether it be strength and conditioning and still training with them, which I think I'll need just from a purely like mental point of view. I think I'll need to be around it in some capacity.
As well.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, that's my entire social life is either you two or like the guys down at the rugby club. It's quite sad, but yeah, no, it's been good. It's been weird. I think it'll be harder when I come to watching games because we're in pre-season now. I think it's easier. When it comes to being sideline watching games, that's going to be where it's
good to miss.
Yeah,
good to miss pre-season.
Yeah, you missed the pre-season bit.
You haven't done pre-season.
It's horrible.
It's horrendous.
It's horrific.
The amount of fitness you're doing and like
it's
hitting
horrible.
bags, it's really bad. But it gets you ready for this.
It does. To answer your question, it's been easier than I thought it would. It would have been easier to sort of step away from the game rather than the game being taken away from me. But I've done pretty well to get to 30 and still enjoy it. But yeah,
how was the injury as a whole?
It's been really tough actually. For the last year, I've had this basically, to avoid boring anyone, a spinal problem. So basically, the vertebrae in my top of my neck have been sort of compromised, basically from playing too much, which is quite unlucky because you either get it or you don't get it, and it's now a condition, not an injury. So it's basically going to keep happening the more I play. So with my job, with this, I can't really afford to sort of miss too much time off, just being sort of hampered by it. So I've sort of decided to sort of, through the advice of the surgeons and the physios, they've said time to call it a day. So it's been tough actually, but I think I'll enjoy it when I'm not not in so much pain the whole time, which is what I've been sort of taking for granted. But I guess you've got a similar sort of thing.
Yeah, I've had quite a few concussions now, for those who don't know, in terms of rugby. That's from having a really bad tackling technique where I just fly into people and don't really care.
Yeah.
So I'm just having a little break as well. Yeah. I took 2 concussions last season, 4 at uni. And I was just like, you know what, I'm just going to chill for a bit, enjoy having a break. And it's quite nice, your body not being sore all the time. But I do miss it as well. It's the whole social side that we spoke about in the whole of season 1. Is like your whole life revolves around a sport. And it might sound a bit weird to some people being like, oh, your life is just this one sport. But it is. That's your social life. Yeah. That's your sort of mental escape for your mental health. Yeah. It's your physical fitness. It's your mental fitness as well. And when that goes, I was a bit like, oh, like what do I do?
Exactly.
But I'm now getting used to it a bit more, playing non-contact sports like cricket again, and it's just
you got really into the gym as well recently, haven't you?
Yeah, I have. Can you guys tell? I'm nowhere near, but yeah, trying to get into the gym more just like I just like the mental side of the gym. Like just going in there as like a routine basis, because when you have, like, for those of you who own your own company or aspiring to own your own company one day, as I do at the moment, you know, your routine can be shot, as you know, with your stuff as well. It's like you can get calls at random times, you can work at midnight, you can work at 6 a.m. and I find it hard to have a bit of a routine around that. So like having the gym early in the morning is kind of just, although it's great for my physical health, it almost just keeps me in check and it gets my day going properly. And that's what I love about it.
It's interesting. You mentioned it there. I think it reminds me of the Elliot Owen episode where he said replacing something with something else. So when he stopped playing rugby, he went into CrossFit. Yeah. And it's quite similar to your March On gym, and he's loving it. And it's quite nice to see him replace the the element of scoring tries and stealing ball and carrying was what he loved doing in rugby. And now he's got involved with the CrossFit. He now setting a PB in some deadlift or something like that. It's quite nice that you've managed to replace some element of rugby with obviously the March on gym stuff, which I know you love.
Yeah, March on's sick.
Really?
I've been doing it I was doing it while I was doing rugby anyway. And it's just like having a buzzing community of people is so helpful.
The community side of it, I think, is the biggest bit.
Community's massive. We spoke about this a lot on season 1 too, but this season 2 being specifically about men's mental health is like, from a male standpoint, in my opinion, being part of a community, like even if you might not show it all the time, is like the backbone of everything you do, and like feeling involved in something. It helps you thrive in all aspects. Like knowing that's there regardless of the situation. If you're feeling down, if you're feeling happy, knowing that there's a community of people there that you can go and see every day, especially as a guy, is absolutely massive for myself personally, and I'm sure a lot of people listening to this as well. It's just
huge.
And the fitness side of it as well. You hopefully, if you gym well enough, you look good, you feel better.
You feel good, yeah.
And then mentally you feel great, and then you're part of a community.
It's a knock-on effect.
That's like a win-win-win.
It's a knock-on effect. You touched on it there. Should we mention starting season 2 and what that's going to bring? You mentioned very briefly.
You take it away.
Yeah,
we're so excited.
Yeah, I just let's tell the people about it. So I think for us, it was season 1 was like an experimental phase where we went to sort of down 100 different avenues to see what was the best fit for us. And I think we came back to the same thing every single time. We had a meeting a couple of weeks back, and we spent about 6 hours in the room in an office talking about it. And we had 1,000 ideas up on the board saying what would work best. And we came back to the same thing every single time, and that was why we started it in the first place. And that was to benefit and sort of better men's mental health and the journey that we can do and the journey that we can share. So I think that's what we decided to go down, and we're going to sort of niche down in season 2 and go down the more men's mental health route, talking about the 3 pillars, which obviously...
3 pillars being relationships, finances, and fitness. That could be mental fitness, it could be physical fitness. And those are 3 of the biggest pillars, if you can say, for men struggling in today's day and age.
Big time.
Which is very personal to us. And as Joe said, we sat there for 6 hours. Oh, mate, we planned this like meticulously, and we were like, we want this here. And then we sat there with like 2 pillars on the board, and we were like, what's the third? And then we called Siobhan, who's behind the camera, and he was like, relationships. And I was like, perfect. So that's
one pillar each.
3. We're going to have guests on who will talk about and specialize in specific areas. It doesn't always have to be all 3 every episode, but on this episode in particular, with it Joe and I being episode 1, we think it's going to be great to just touch on our points of view on every single bit of it, and also a few Q&A questions as well. And we're going to attach something on the screen, so if you're listening, you might not be able to see this, but it's a little wheel spinner, and it's going to pick which order we put our topics in. So we've got, as we said, relationships, finances, fitness, and also a Q&A section, which we have 3 of the best questions that you guys asked us on Instagram. And if you do want to do that and you're listening to this now and you haven't had the chance to ask questions before, always just ping it to our DM. There's always stuff on our Instagram story too. So I'm going to start us off with a little spin here. I'll put this on the screen for those of you who can't see. We're going. We need a nice sound effect behind this as well. We're starting on relationships.
Poignant.
Oof.
Poignant. Okay.
How's life been with you? We're going to talk about romantic relationships in particular today, and also people know you have friendships, family relationships too. But today's going to be about romantic relationships. Yeah. So how's that been for you recently?
I mean, it can be more poignant for myself. I think I've just come out of a relationship about 2 or 3 months ago, and it's been difficult. It's been a real sort of season of change for me in many aspects of my life. One of which was rugby, which I touched on earlier. And another one was being sort of single again and sort of trying to find my feet back into sort of single life, which I'm not really good at. I'm not really good at doing that. I'm not very good at being single. I think partly because I've in the past have used relationships to sort of mask a lot of my own issues, insecurities. And sort of if I can sort of focus my area into fixing someone else, it means I don't have to fix myself. And when you're on your own and you're in your own head a bit more, it sort of forces you to do that a bit like in that way. So I think from this time round, I've sort of vowed to sort of really work on the things I know I need to work on personally, and really sort of grow and build myself up a bit more before jumping into anything else. Not that I did that prior to this, but I feel like I just need to really work on myself a bit more. It sounds really cliche, but I really sort of I'm honing in on my own personal development and growth, because I know I needed to do that before, and this allows me to do that. So that's my personal thing. What about yourself?
Yeah. We just had our
celebrating it. Yeah,
we just had our 3-year anniversary, Meg and I, which is amazing.
Yeah,
it's as Joe knows. Joe and I have spoke about this loads of cameras. I'm not very good in relationships with my ADHD. Also, just me as a person. Well, I never thought I was. This one's been incredibly easy. Everything's been pretty much great. Obviously, everyone has ups and downs in all situations, but it's been quite cool because I do struggle to stick to things a lot of the time, not just relationships, but everything in general. That's just sort of my personality. But it's been great, and I hate saying this when you've just gone through like a breakup situation, but I actually think it's quite nice in a way that I'm at the 3-year anniversary and we can both talk on like 100%. Different sides of things at the moment as well, because you've been in relationships for 3 years before as well. Yeah, and it's just it's a pretty cool feeling. It's it was nice to like sit back on and like look at photos of where we were like on day one and stuff like that, and how we changed and progressed as like people and helped each other. And I think all a guy really wants, in my opinion, in a relationship is just someone to back them and someone to believe in them and sort of hear them. And Meg does that, and I'm very grateful for that.
That's awesome.
Without sounding too cringe.
No, mate, that's
She's
awesome.
listening to this, being like, yeah.
That's also championing. No, that's really good. I think you touched on it a bit earlier on. You said about how you're not easy sometimes to be around as someone with ADHD. As a guy or a girl, conversely, watching or listening to this, if they have a male partner, either the one listening to this or a lady's listening to this, young ladies listening to this, and their male partner has got ADHD, how does that manifest in you in terms of how challenging it can be to be with someone like that?
It's tough, especially, I don't know if it's just ADHD as a whole. It's just like, I know I'm not easy to be around. So I think it's just like, if I can see it from Meg's point of view, is she's just very understanding and lets me be myself. And it might not always be the best thing to let me be myself, but like, I'm not with someone who judges me. And I think that's probably the biggest thing is like, a lot of the time I massively get in my own head about relationship situations. Like, have I upset her? Have I done this? And she's just always very open with communication and always just lets me be myself. And I think they're probably like two massive things it's not necessarily a massive long-term relationship, but in 3 years where I've been like, it's been super obvious for me, like how easy it's been on that standpoint is just openness of chat. If I'm doing something that's annoying, being like, listen, you're being really frustrating right now, letting me know it, but also not being like, oh, he's being a dick and going and talking behind my back. Because that's the stuff that really gets me. It's just like open conversation, one-on-one. Sorry, I'll stop doing that. I thought
like those things are integral to any relationship, whether it be friendship, sort of romantic relationship between partners or business relationships. I feel like if you have an open communication and you allow someone to be themselves, and I feel like we get that feedback from our guests a lot, is giving them an open platform to just be themselves and be comfortable in an environment that really isn't very comfortable, like some relationships are for yourself. I think that's integral to any working relationship for it to sort of last the test of time. I feel like as long as you communicate and you're sort of open and transparent with them, a lot can go wrong still, but I feel like you set the foundations for a really working, fruitful, long-lasting relationship when you have that, which is quite nice that Meg's allowed you that space to be able to be your weird and wonderful self, which I think many people can relate to as well, like me included. I feel like if you're not able to be yourself, it's sort of doomed from the get-go.
Yeah, 100%. I think communication is probably the biggest. One of, I reckon that probably is number one, just communication as a whole, because if you stop speaking throughout the relationship, these little things add up and they just become a massive problem. Huge. That's what I found in past relationships, and also just in terms of friendships as well, is if you do have a problem with someone or something, please just like nip it in the bud. That would be my best piece of advice, especially if you're with someone who is neurodivergent like myself, who can massively overthink things and become very stressed over the most minor situation a lot of the time. Although I think I'm getting a bit better with that, and what I'm hoping I am with maturity is open communication is massive. And I feel like every situation I've been in where that hasn't been the case it's probably been one of the biggest catalysts of why something has failed.
No, I totally agree.
And also, I want to know your view, because talking about open communication, I had a stat here before, and it was 45% of men feel like they can't discuss emotions without being judged. So basically 1 in 2.
I'd say it's more.
Yeah.
I mean, obviously the stats don't lie, but I'm surprised it's not more.
I'm talking about open communication, but a lot of the time in my head, I'm like, I can't speak to her about this because I feel like she's just going to be like, judge me. And
that's also in a 3-year relationship as well, by the way. Like you still get that.
What is it? Is that an imposter syndrome type thing, or?
It's. I think it's more ingrained in most men anyway. So I feel like,
why is it? Why do you think that is?
I feel like it's fear of judgment, and also the gender role thing. I feel like whilst it's very confused nowadays, the traditional gender role thing is to be very stiff upper lip and very sort of keep your own. Being a provider, stoicism, all that kind of stuff is if you start to complain or you be too open and vulnerable, you're opening yourself up to sort of harm, as it were. And I think women, I mean, I'm talking again, and the gender role thing is very confused, but I think it's that fear of being judged and fear of not being seen as a man. And I think that's where the vulnerability side of things come into. And you said it there, like you're in a 3-year relationship and you're going strong, and yet you have those elements of doubt where you're like, should I tell them that?
Do I
don't
share
I?
this bit? Like, am I comfortable enough sharing?
Yeah.
I wonder if that ever goes.
I think that a lot.
You don't want to burden someone.
No.
Although if she tells me anything, I'm like you're not. It's not a burden, and I'm sure she feels the same. But sometimes you overthink things. You struggle more in your head than you do in reality a lot of the time.
All the time.
And it's just with a relationship, you think you're going to burden them. You think you're going to stress them out by sharing this. You know, you might not want to have an argument or whatever it is. It doesn't have to be an argument, but a heated conversation.
Yeah.
And it's just you get in this endless row in your head where you're like, I can't share it in the end. And then it almost becomes too late to share. And then I think that's the backbone of a lot of relationship problems is you'll snap at them one day or they'll snap at you one day and they'll be like, why have you snapped? And it's because there's 6 or 7 things that have been going on behind the scenes which you haven't shared. And it always comes back to that communication point. That's my
I think that's common in all relationships, but I feel like it's just more common if you are you have neurodiversity of ADHD, and that's across the board, by the way. Like everyone has that, and that's across the board. I think that's just highlighted the fact that you have so much going on in your head at any given time. If you offloaded every thought that goes into your head, you'd be talking to her every second of the day. You'd be constantly talking to her. It's that, isn't it? There's a constant merry-go-round of information that's going around your head all the time. And that's quite hard to offload to someone who's got their own stuff going on as well. I mean, Meg works really hard. She works long hours. She's stressed. She's got her own stuff going on to deal with as well. So it's quite hard to have that balance between offloading, being stoic, being a man, sticking up for yourself, but also dealing with your own stuff on your own as well. It's quite important to, whilst offloading stuff in your relationship is really key, it's important to sort of be okay in your own skin and be okay on your own, which a lot of people aren't very good at doing or being. And I feel like it's just a balance. And I feel like if you're with Meg in 20, 30 years' time, you'd have probably struck an even better balance than you do now after 3 years. So I feel like it's just a learning process, isn't it? And also maturing, because you're 21 years of age. Like that's like without condescending, you're still so young compared to all the years you have left of that maturity. So if you are with Meg when you're 30, hopefully you are, it'll be very different to how it looks now, for sure.
I agree.
Yeah.
What if you flip that on its head for guys who don't like to share it and actually probably deal better not sharing things? What would you say there from that point of view?
It's really tricky.
I know a lot of my friends, like, they just deal with things internally. If they share it, actually makes it worse.
Yeah.
And I get like that in certain situations, and I think some things are better to just internalize, but in my opinion, it's picking the right one. I just wanted to see what
you just took the words out of my mouth. I think it's like not just romantic relationships, but also friendships as well. I think it's so important that you choose the right moment to when it's okay for you to do so, but also who you say it to and who you do it with. So I think if you have that safe space, it doesn't have to be one of your best friends. It could be a teacher at school. It could be someone that you have a close bond with that you know and trust. I feel like trust is a huge thing. If you trust that person, having that open forum to be able to have those open, honest communications and being raw and vulnerable, it's actually a really amazing thing. But asking a 16, 17-year-old boy in particular to do that is so difficult because they just don't want to. They're like, they don't even know how to think of these things themselves. I, at 30 years old, can look back and think, why didn't I do those things? Whereas if someone told me to do it at 16, 17, I would have said, I don't even know what I'm thinking in my own head, let alone being able to translate it onto paper So I feel like the advice I would give is to try and find a safe space, whether it be writing stuff down or practice them, try them in a safe space, either on your own or with a loved one, whether it be your mum, your dad, your brother, cousin, or a friend, or your girlfriend or boyfriend. I feel like it's a really important thing to try and practice. And if those people ever judge you for those experiences that you're going through, they're not worth telling them again. Whilst that vulnerability can be a scary place, and it can leave you sort of feeling really hurt, you'll learn a lot from that process. So if that boyfriend or girlfriend or cousin judges you for that, then you'll know not to do it again in the future, and you'll grow a thicker skin as a result of that, in my experience.
Completely agree.
Yeah.
Also, if you want to know more on the relationship side of things, or you want to hear us talk about certain topics in particular, or you have bits you want to share yourself, please do drop them in the comments below. We love to hear from you guys. You're not hassling us. We always get messages being like, we hope we don't hassle you. And I'm like, please message hassle whenever. Please do hassle us. Send whatever. Send your points of view on the relationship side as well. I hope we've given our information on that 100%. Point of it. And to conclude that, we're going to spin the wheel on the next one.